Hey folks, Mark Moyer here, and you are in the Clubroom, brought to you by Win Again. And today's Lunch and Learn, I am super duper thrilled and excited to have Diane Diresta in here with us. She's an incredible expert in the space of presentation coaching and really teaching people how not to freak out when they're on stage or in front of a camera. And she's been running her own firm, Diresta Communications, for many years. She's an expert at teaching people how to be keynote speakers, seminar facilitation. She does executive speech and presentation coaching. She's a total pros pro. I'm really excited to have her on board, and I'm going to invite you in now, Diane, and we're going to be off and running. So on your marks, get set, just hit the accept or yes or whatever the thing is. And when I met Diane, I was basically instantly kind of caught her off guard. I said, you need to be one of our Lunch and Learn experts. You are that good. So sure enough, here she is, and she accepted.
I had to wear my glasses to be able to come in here and see the small print, but great to be here, Mark. Thanks for inviting me.
Oh, absolutely, my pleasure, and I'm really thrilled. So we've got a lot of ground to cover, but I want to jump right in and just real quickly, in sort of 20 seconds or less kind of a thing, what on earth got you into this space in the first place?
Well, I started as a speech pathologist. So I went to Columbia for my master's, worked for 8 years with children in schools, left there and went to Solomon Brothers doing management training, and then went to Drexel Burnham as an assistant vice president, recruiting people from the trading floor. I learned that I liked what I was doing. I liked the pace. I liked the money. I did not like the culture of Wall Street. So I started freelancing in hope of, or I should say, in search of a training manager job. 2 years later, I was offered a job and I turned it down because I loved what I was doing. And so what happened over time, instead of doing someone's sales training and someone's career development, I started to develop my own expertise. So today, those three buckets are presentation, interpersonal communication, and media training, and they're all under the umbrella of executive presence. And then along the way, I wrote a book, which is now in its third edition, called Knockout Presentations. And I also have this ebook called Give Fear the Finger, How to Knock Out Fear of Speaking. And I don't talk about it too much because it resonates in New York, but not everywhere. So
what are you talking about? Whoever. The middle finger is like our sixth finger here in New York. It's a known appendage.
Well, the reason I came up with that title is I learned that there is an acupressure point right here, right below the knuckle. And so if you press like this, it helps to relieve anxiety. So we're already jumping ahead to technique. So I said, literally, you're giving fear the finger because this reduces anxiety when you press down here. So that's how that title came up. I thought it was clever, but I get pushback on it.
But where do you actually, it's got to be a needle though, right? Not just a pressure or something?
With your finger, just press down, acupressure.
Just below the knuckle right here on the inside?
Yeah, like right here. Yes. So here's your knuckle, this spongy part on the inside. I don't know if you can see it here.
And what happened? What's it make me do?
You just press down on that with your thumb. It relieves anxiety.
Oh, but I don't have any right now, so I guess
then you can't test.
I'm joking. Whenever
That's
I'm around
something
all
that you
these
can
other
do.
people. Yeah. All right, I will. I'm starting to feel anxious around you right now. Oh my God. But no, look, right now, we're in the midst of, or hopefully we're done with this whole pandemic stuff and everything, but people have gotten much more used to, unfortunately, I guess, but used to being in front of a camera versus in front of people. And it's often, people say, well, it's just the same thing. It's completely different, in my opinion. I personally, when I'm speaking in front of a crowd, I like to gauge what the reactions I'm seeing, and it's impossible to do when you're staring into a little dot. But tell me a little bit about, for virtual presentations, if we're doing this right now, give me 2 or 3, like some tips and strategies that you like to offer people that you think helps it make it easier for them.
Well, first of all, you're absolutely right. It is different. And for years, I was saying that the future presenter will need broadcasting skills, and here we are. So at the beginning of the pandemic, I saw a senator on TV, and I had seen her many times on news shows talking as an expert. She knew her message point. She was media savvy. And this was her first virtual presentation. Literally, I'm not exaggerating. I saw the side of her face and she was looking down. She didn't even know where the camera was. So the first thing is you've got to know where that camera is and the lens. And when people have more than one laptop, you'll see sometimes they're looking here, but really they need to be here. So the first thing is, how do you make an eye connection so that you have some kind of relationship with the audience? And it's hard. You have to think of yourself giving a satellite interview. So right now I'm looking directly at the lens because I want an eye connection. I see you over here, but I can't read your expressions. Now I can, but now I don't make eye contact. So here's how I do it, Mark. When I'm speaking, I'm looking at the lens. And when you're speaking, I'm now disengaging from there and I'm looking at you because I need those nonverbal facial expressions. So that's the first thing. It is not easy. It's something that you need to practice. Now, here's the good news. There are some products now. One of them is called PlexiCam and another is called Center Cam. And it's like a lever that you hook onto your computer or laptop. And so the webcam is in the middle. So it looks like you're looking in the middle of the screen. So if anyone wants to write anything in the chat, it's PlexiCam, PLEXICAM. And the other one I think is called Center Cam. And you can look those up. You can get them on Amazon. So those are some tools that make it a little easier. So that's the first thing. Second thing.
Does it, but before you wait, so it goes right in the middle. Does it, but I mean, I guess it blocks your view of the people, but that's okay.
It does. So it's plastic, it's clear lucite, it goes here, but then you're looking here. So it's a challenge. Now the Center Cam, I believe, actually has their own camera that goes there. I don't use it. I got used to what I do, and so I will continue this way. I have heard that I think it's Cisco is working on a screen where the lens is in the middle, but that will not be available for the public. It's working for them. But this technology is coming. It will be coming. But in the interim, so the first thing is you need to create an eye connection, master the lens. The second thing is engagement. The talking head is dead. And so if you think you're going to lecture and just read over slides, forget it. You've lost them. You can get away with lecturing more so in person because you're right there. But here, they're on their phones. So the idea of engaging is really important. So having people respond in the chat, polling, discussions, exercises, fun things, just what I did before where we were doing the finger thing.
Now, when you mentioned the polling, you know, it's interesting. I saw technology once fairly recently, and I forgot the name of it now, where it's really interesting to do live polling as part of a presentation, because then you can really gauge what direction you want to take your discussion based on some of the answers. Have you seen that sort of thing? Or,
Mentimeter is one of those technologies where you can do that in a room and have that on the screen and it'll be real time. But you have polls in Zoom and other platforms as well. So you've got that live polling. And what's great too is you can do captioning so that if somebody misses something, they can read it as you're speaking. So that's another benefit of the virtual platform. But it takes a lot of practice, a lot of coordination. I recommend that people have some kind of a producer or assistant so that they're working the back end, because it's very hard to do all of it together.
Yeah, well, it's called multitasking, of which I've never actually been able to do anything like that. Other people can do it, but I can barely single task. So couldn't agree with you more. Now, so there's obviously some tools to make it a lot easier, but what about, you talked earlier about like the listener paying attention to the facial expressions and so forth. Tell me a little bit about, you know, when we're doing it this way, how should we do hand? Should we still be doing this? Should we still be, you know, what kind of?
Okay, so let me give you some tips. Gesturing is important, but it's different on screen. So this is true. I say this in person, online. Your power space is from your waist to your face. That
Okay.
means that you want your hands above the waist because that will make you look confident. And anything below midline is not confident, it's tentative. Here's
Okay.
the problem. If you make a lot of gestures like you just did,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
looks frenetic. So
Yeah.
you need to minimize your gestures and use fewer of them when you're on the screen. The other thing you want to know is, or be aware of, is you want them to be close to the chest because look what happens if they're out here.
Yeah.
They're large.
Gigantic.
I
Yeah.
remember seeing Jamie Dimon from Citibank
Yeah.
about a month ago, and he was on a news show, and he was very excited. He was like this, and said, "Look at those mitts. He needs to bring them in, rein them in."
Look,
So that's one of the things to be aware of. Close to the chest, and then you want simple gestures. So we have two things we want to cover. Let's compare last year with this year. Simple, close to the chest, and then come back to a rest position. But do use them because it's very stiff if you never move. And I know that when people are animated and excited about their topic, their hands are going to move, but know how to use them effectively.
that's great because but also I've seen some, as you've mentioned too, not just the big like lobster hands or whatever, but then also if they're doing lots of waving around, what ends up happening is that people are actually looking at the hands and not really listening. So you
Right.
have to be careful to over, you know.
Yes, because see, you have this small frame. So if you're
Right.
on a stage or in a room, an office, you can extend, and I do recommend that you expand your gestures, but look what happens. They get
Yeah.
cut off.
Right.
And then yes, it dominates. So you want simple gestures close to your chest, but you want to use them without a doubt.
Now, so I'm assuming correctly that we're going to be back to doing stage presentations soon. I mean, and
Hopefully.
pretty much now and so forth, right? So tell me a little bit. This is something I took some public speaking classes a few years ago with Toastmasters and so forth, and um, can't imagine how cruddy I was before then because I'm still I've got too many filler words and it kills me. But that's another story. But when you're on stage, and I want to talk a little bit about stage presence and
Mhm.
what is going to resonate with an audience. What sort of things can we do and should we do and should we not do?
Are you talking about in person?
Yeah, in person. So I'm speaking to 100 100 people in an auditorium.
All right, so the first question I ask an audience is, when you enter a room, do you own the room or does the room own you? So, how you enter a room and hold the space is important in how you set the tone and by how you bring your audience in. So, a mistake that people make is they walk quickly into the room or on the stage and they start talking. No, you want to come in, pivot, hold the space, do a quick scan, just very quickly. Bring them in, let them come to you. You want to feel their energy and you want to hold that. One of the biggest challenges, aside from eye contact online, is the pause. And that's true online and it's true in person. So when you can hold a space, when you can pause at the end of a sentence, that's power. That's presence. They can feel that. So to your point, I also miss in person because you don't get that energy exchange the way you do when you're in a room with a person. The other thing that happens when you compare stage presence to screen presence is that the the screen is two-dimensional and it tends to flatten you. And I used to see this when I had a camera in the room. It will put on 5 pounds and it will flatten you. So you just have to be aware that you're going to look a little heavier. Don't take it personally. It's just the screen. But it also affects emotions. So if you're on screen, you have to push up your energy because you
Mm,
will sound
yeah,
flatter than when you're in
right.
person. You've seen that, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
so those are some of the things to be
That's
aware of.
that's great. You know, it's funny because and there's some people that always talk about how absolutely terrified they are and the butterflies and everything else. And then there's other people that it's like they're talking to just their friend or something, but it just happens to be 100 friends in the room.
Right.
But there's one thing that I was taught, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this. When you're in front of 100 people, tell me what you look at and what is your process of trying to bring them in to you?
When you're in front of a large group, you want to make it a one-to-one experience. Now, when you do that, you're going to be less nervous. This is fear. 100 faces staring at me. So you don't want to do that. So you break up the room either into quadrants or thirds. So I usually do quadrants. So what you do is you look at one person here for a sentence or two. Now I'm going to look at the person over here. I'm going to go to this corner and I'm going to come here. So you see how I've included everyone, but look at what that's like on screen. It's distracting. That's why on the virtual platform, you want to look at the lens, but
Right.
in a room, you want to include people. So if you can stay for about 3 to 5 seconds per person, and you just choose spots, those people around them are going to feel like you're connecting with them. And you know what? Most of us are okay speaking one-to-one. So choose a friendly face. And I always say to people, Mark, don't look at the person who's like this. Because they're going to shatter your confidence. Don't try to convert them. Find the friendly faces, the people nodding, smiling. Go back to them again, because you're going to feed off that energy and you'll start to feel more confident. So
I
that's the
love
key.
that. I love that. That's funny. I feel like sometimes I can convert those people, but sometimes they're either that or they're looking at their phone or something, and I sometimes will make a remark and I probably shouldn't. But anyway, a funny one, like I like saying that, "Oh, you just got my text. That's great." But so give me a trick or two or a tip or two on how to be more confident. Um, we'll do the virtual one first. Like how can someone who, I mean, look, I've spoken to plenty of people in this format that have been a little bit nervous to be in front of a camera like this. What are some of the things they can do to ease the nerves?
It's interesting that you say that, because I was working with someone on nervousness and he said, "Yeah, now that we're in this virtual world, I'm not as nervous." And I think it was because he could see himself. I don't know what the reason was. Other people say they're really nervous.
Yeah.
So there are two things, and this is how I work with everyone. It's mindset and skill set. The first thing you need to do is set your mind. And I know that if you're nervous, you're being self-centered, because it's all about me, myself, and I. Oh, I hope I don't lose my train of thought. Oh, I hope I don't sweat. Get over yourself. It's not about you, it's about them. Your focus needs to be on the audience. How can I make them feel comfortable? How can I say this so that they understand? That's the focus. I also know that if you're nervous, you're in the future, because you're thinking about everything that can go wrong. So
Right.
what
Right.
you want is you want to come back to the present. And the way to do that, Mark, is with the breath. So we work with breathing. And one of the techniques I use is square breathing, and it's to the count of 4. So you inhale through your nose, you hold the breath, you exhale through your mouth, and you hold it again, all for 4 counts. And that's something you can do while you're in your seat, before you come into the room. And what that does is it slows down the racing heart. It slows down the physiology so that you get more grounded. But when I work with people, we talk about what confidence looks like and sounds like, so that you can wear that uniform. Once you know the skills, it's easier and easier to do that. So the first thing is mindset. The second thing is skill set. And so it's the eye contact, knowing where to look. It's your preparation. And by the way, it's 90% preparation and only 10% delivery. If you don't know your material, I can't help you. You have to
Right.
know what you're talking about. Sometimes slides can help because you have a reference point, as long as you don't read them word for word. Also, being interactive with the audience, I always recommend that you start with something interactive when you're asking a question. If you're extremely nervous, it's probably good to start with a question. Why? Because the focus is on them. You get time to catch your breath, to get grounded again, and then you can start. And then you feel like there's a dialogue. The other thing that helps you to feel more confident is get there early. I always arrive an hour early, and I try to practice in the room. For some reason, when you
Hmm.
practice in the room, it goes better. I don't know why. But if you greet people as they come in, you'll feel like you have some friends. And if you have some side conversations, then you can reference that in your talk. I was just talking to Mark, and he said the same thing I'm about to tell you. Isn't that right, Mark? Where's Mark? Mark, raise your, yeah, we were having this conversation. So you see how I make it natural, conversational, instead of, I must stand here like a totem pole and say every word the way I scripted it. Yeah, no wonder you're nervous if that's how you're doing it. So I like to give people permission to be themselves. And there are three things that everybody needs to master: know yourself, know your audience, know your message. So let me explain that.
Mhm.
First, know yourself. Who are you as a package of skills? What is your style? What is your personal brand? Know that and then be that. Do you? Because authenticity is the key. If you are being real, the audience will relate to you. Secondly, know your audience. This is the area where we're all the weakest. We don't spend as much time here. So, what I often do is we create a listener profile together and we do a deep dive into who are these people, what do they care about, etc. And then the last part, know your message and know it cold. So I think that if you have message points as opposed to a script, you're going to be a lot more effective. So you can write it out word for word, but then convert it to bullet points. And for some reason, three is a magic number. So if you have three messages, people will remember those. Here's the benefit of having bullet points:
Mhm.
you can say it a different way. If you forget, you can say it differently. They don't know the difference. And that's what makes you sound conversational. And that's what gives you the impression of a subject matter expert. So those are a few of the tips, but that know yourself, know your audience, know your message, that is a formula that's all you need to know, because everything falls into one of those three areas.
You brought up a great point about nobody else knows unless you're showing slides or you've given them advance the sort of notice of what you're going
Mhm.
to be talking about, the talking points and so forth. It's funny, many, many years ago, I was in a band and, you know, I get concerned when there are mistakes, but the funny part is 99 times out of 100, the audience has no clue, no clue, especially if you're playing original
That's
music
right.
that they've never heard. Just plow right through it. They're listening, they're still dancing, they're still whatevering anyway. And it's the same thing with these presentations. When you're, I another thing I like to coach people on is I tell them when you're speaking to an audience, you don't necessarily need to have 2 times, 5 times, 10 times the knowledge of that topic than
Mhm.
the audience. It can be 10% more. If you're giving any of them those aha moments where they're like, oh, I got to write that down or I've got to remember that, that's where you're connecting with them. And that's to me, it's, and I don't know why I'm telling you this, this stuff, but um, to me, I really try to make sure that I resonate with an audience and that they remember me and want me back someday and all that sort of thing, and not just. I mean, I try to entertain, which helps, but then I also try to educate, and I think that's sometimes some speakers sort of do one and not the other, and it's important to combine
Mhm.
the two, I think.
Edutainment, yeah. People want to
Um,
laugh, they wanna have fun, and
yeah,
to your point earlier, they won't know whether or not you said it the way you intended, but that's the power of storytelling, because storytelling or stories have a sequence, and that
yeah.
helps people with their confidence because you know the story, you lived it, and all you have to do is go back in time and remember and relive it, and when you relive it, your passion comes out. The other part of that is that when people are having difficulty, they need recovery strategies. When you were talking about the mistake with
Mm,
the music, I remember being at the Ryman Theater in Tennessee, in Nashville, and there was a duet. It was a play, but they were brothers playing music. At one point, one of them hit a bad note, and his voice cracked. And I thought, oh my God, what's he going to do? So after the number, he stopped. He looked out at the audience and said, I want to thank the audience for seeing me through puberty. Well, we laughed hysterically. It was so good. So that's poise. When you talk about presence, that's it.
yeah.
The Now the difference, I shouldn't say difference because you can have trouble with technology in person, but the chances of the technology being difficult online is a lot more common. And I had an experience where things were crashing. And what I did is I stopped doing what I was doing and I went to something interactive. So plan for these things and have recovery strategies. And no one will fault you. They'll actually respect you for the way that you handle the mishap.
Well, right. I mean, when I was in also a million years ago, I took an acting class and the same sort of thing
Mhm.
where one of the techniques they like to use is if you said your line to me and then I couldn't remember my line, they'll often say repeat her line back. So if you say, Mark, where's the burnt toast or something, I'll say, you mean you want to know where the burnt toast is? Well, yeah. And then hopefully it'll trigger
Yeah.
something. So that's why sometimes if you see like a play, Broadway or something like that, sometimes you'll see that repeated line back. That's the technique that they're using, I guess. But anyways, so you mentioned earlier about the the power of a pause. Sometimes, I mean, do you recommend using it sort of throughout a presentation?
Use it strategically.
Mhm.
What you don't want is a speed demon. Here's what I find people do.
Right.
They talk on one breath. So it'll be, today is Thursday, tomorrow will be Friday, and then it will be Saturday. Now, that wasn't the words too fast, but it was all squished together. So you want to practice, today is Thursday, tomorrow will be Friday, and then it will be Saturday. So if you do a couple of beats as a reminder, it will help. Here's why the pause is so important. First of all, you want your message to land. And it goes by like a ticker tape if you don't give them the pause. But also, if you want to be persuasive, well, what's persuasive? Emotions, not intellect, right? And so you need time for the message to get in. And so that is why you want to practice that pause.
Well, it's funny also, it reminds me of, nowadays I seem to see text when it's written. It used to be text, you'd see a paragraph and then another paragraph. And now you see just one sentence at a time, because people more than ever now are not reading big chunks, but they're also not listening to a nonstop monologue like that, like what you just said. So I think putting those spaces in is important also for that sort of the cadence and the rhythm of it. But then you want to break it up sometimes to kind of like catch the audience, like, wait, what did I just miss? Kind of like, and sort of refocus.
Right. And telling stories as well. You can really use a dramatic pause and hold them there and anchor them. So pausing, silence is a really powerful tool when you use it and when you use it well. So don't be afraid of silence is the message here. It's a good thing.
It doesn't work so well domestically. Anyways, so also, how about volume inflection? They sort of, raising and lowering key
All right, so
and volume.
Here's something to be aware of.
Mm.
It's called uptalk, and uptalk is a rising inflection. It sounds like I'm asking a question. I'm really making a statement. So when you have that sing-song quality, which used to be called Valley Girl talk, it takes away your authority. It makes you sound tentative and you'll lose credibility. So one of the exercises we do often is we bring the voice up and then we bring the voice down. And when you hear that downward inflection, it's amazing what it does for your authority, for your credibility, for that gravitas. So that's the first thing. So you want to use your voice, your intonation to give the right meaning, because most of the message is in the tone. It's not in the words. So if I say, I'm not angry, well, what's the message there? You're not going to believe the words. So when you are speaking, whether it's on the screen or in a room, you want to use energy and you want to play with your voice. So you can bring your voice down. It can be soft for effect and people will come in. And then you can get louder. But what's not good is one note monotone, because that's going to put them to sleep. Now, what's really key on the virtual platform is your amplification, even more important than lighting. And so I'm wearing earbuds today. They're simple. I've used them on many podcasts. They work. But there's also the broadcast quality microphones. There are the headsets. Find something that works for you and do that. The worst sounds that I've heard, at least on TV, is when someone's calling in from their home or office to a news show and you hear that tinny quality. It's because they're talking directly at the computer and they're not amplifying. So I'd strongly recommend some kind of amplification.
Interesting. I don't think I've ever been accused of not having amplification, but this has all been fantastic. Now, I've got great news for you. You've now got one more book sold. And one of our listeners just bought it because of what you were just talking about. So fantastic.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you.
All
That
right.
that's was that Knockout Presentations that they just
Yes,
bought? Yeah,
of
thank you.
course. Um, and well, so anyways, what's the best way for people to reach out to you if they want to get some more of this coaching?
The best way to reach me is through my website, diresta.com. That's diresta.com. I don't know if we can write that in the chat. I'm also going to invite you to my Clubhouse room, which is called Confidence, Clarity, Charisma. And we're meeting tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern. So it's
Oh,
every
cool.
Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern. And the topic is going to be humor. So that should be a really good discussion. And then, of course, I have my YouTube channel, /Diane Diresta. I have over 100 YouTube videos.
Nice.
So
Wow. All
welcome.
right. That's fantastic. And look, I think that what sometimes people fail to understand is that um, this kind of advice is not just for someone who's in on a stage or in front of a camera. It's for anybody that ever has to present, even to their group. Even to anything. Or if you're a baseball manager and you want to speak to your players, you need to have better communication skills, and it's just so critical to have, to be an expert communicator will put you leaps and bounds ahead of everybody else. So I think the advice that you offer and give is fantastic and incredibly valuable. So I really appreciate you being here. This is fantastic,
Thank you.
for everybody who was listening, and for those that weren't able to catch it, we will put this up on our YouTube channel, and I'll share this with you. But thanks so much for being here today. I really appreciate it, man.
Thank you, Mark.